Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're watching this. My name is Jennifer and welcome into my home and into my kitchen. This morning I am going to be preparing for a family gathering for a family member that we were not able to spend Christmas with, and our son and his family are coming today, and so I am putting together a few pieces of the meal that we will be having. You can probably hear my bread machine going. I have some dough in there. I'm going to make some dinner rolls. I already have some rice in the Instapot because we are going to be making together my family's famous green rice, what we call it, which is just a broccoli and rice casserole. We're going to start off by making the cream of mushroom soup from scratch. And, ooh, all the noises going on all at once. Starting off with the cream of mushroom from scratch, and then we'll get into assembling the green rice casserole together. So I'm going to bring you down here with me and we'll get started on the cream of mushroom soup. Okay, got you down here on the stove. I guess it helps if I unlock my controls, and we'll turn the oven, the stovetop on. There we go. And we have 6 tablespoons of butter that I'm going to melt to start with. Now, green rice, as we call it in our family, is basically rice with cream of chicken or cream of mushroom soup and broccoli, chopped up broccoli in it, with some onions and celeries put in there and some cheese on top. It is a favorite at our family gatherings, and generally we only eat it at holidays. Well, last Christmas I decided I do not want to have this delicious dish just at holidays, but how could I change it and spruce it up a little bit so that I can have it more often? And I decided that I was going to make it into an actual one dish meal. And so I started adding chicken into it. So it was a chicken, rice, broccoli. It had everything that we needed as far as a meal goes. And so now I make it year round. I've made it several times this year besides just the holidays. But by adding chicken in it, I've made it a complete meal. Today, we won't be putting the chicken in it because we will be grilling a London broil on the grill. And we're having the dinner rolls and this green rice. And maybe I'll make some deviled eggs or something. I'm not sure. But we'll see what else. So I'm going to let this butter melt, and then I'll bring you back when it's all ready. Okay, our butter is almost 100% melted, so I'm going to go ahead and add our flour in there. And I'm adding 6 tablespoons of flour to match the 6 tablespoons of butter. And essentially what we're making here is a roux. And those were kind of heaping tablespoons. I'm going to make that one a little bit smaller. And we're going to cook this until it's all combined and the flour is cooked. We don't want any raw flour flavor in this, which is going to happen pretty quick because I had the stove turned up. So you can see we're just getting our roux here. Had that burner too high, so I'm just going to take it off for a second. And while I get my salt and pepper, so I'm going to do about a half a teaspoon of pepper. I'm using white pepper here, and a half a teaspoon of salt. And half a teaspoon of garlic powder. And then we'll get that all blended in. There we go. And then from here, we're going to add in our milk, which is 1 cup of milk and 1 cup of chicken broth. You could use a vegetable broth if you wanted to. This is, there we go. And we're going to let that come up. I do have a whisk here if I need it. And then I have some I have some dehydrated mushroom here, mushroom powder. I had just dehydrated some mushrooms and then ground it up. And I'm going to put about, well, that whole thing. That was about maybe 2 to 3 tablespoons. You can put fresh mushrooms, whole mushrooms. You can, if you're going to make it cream of chicken with just the chicken broth, will do. You can also, at this point, you can make it cream of anything. Cream of celery, cream of broccoli, whatever you want to put in here. I like the cream of mushroom in my green rice, so that's what we're going to do. And then while this thickens, it's going to rehydrate that mushroom plus impart that mushroom flavor in there. You can use any kind of mushrooms that you like. I just use regular white button mushrooms. I have made this before where I rehydrated some different types of mushrooms that my son-in-law had. I forget what kind of mushrooms they were, I'm sorry. But rehydrated them in some water and used the water in here along with the chicken broth. And that imparted some wonderful flavor. But I'm actually putting the mushrooms in there. So we're going to bring that up to temp since we put the milk was cold and the chicken broth was room temperature. So we're going to let that come up to temp and cook. And while that is doing, so the rice already finished in the Instapot, so I went ahead and got that out so it would not continue to cook. And I have that in a separate bowl. So the rice is all ready. I'm going to put the original recipe down in the description box. I am reducing the recipe a little bit because I will be just cooking this in an 8x8. We don't need more than an 8x8 dish. The original recipe does fill a 13x9 dish. So, but we just don't need that much today. And I don't want that much leftovers. I had so much leftover from Christmas that we ate the Christmas meal for almost a week straight. And I don't want to do that. So maybe we can send some home with them. So while that's cooking, I'm going to get set up to chop up the onions and the celery, and I'll bring you right back. Real quick, I just wanted to see you. That only took a couple of minutes, and this got nice and thick. This is beautiful. It tastes delicious, and this is all ready for our casserole. So let's go get the onions and celery ready. Okay, I have cleaned up my workstation and got myself a compost bowl. Nothing fancy here. We are just chopping up some celery and onions, like I said before. You want to make sure that you have a good sharp knife. The pieces can go to the size that you desire. I'm going to kind of cut the celery into fourths, and I'm using about 2 celery stalks for this. If I were making the full 13x9, I would probably use 3 or 4 depending on the size of the celery. So do you have any dishes that you only pull out at the holidays that maybe you could, well, we all could probably cook them during the year, but can you change it up a little bit so that maybe it makes a little bit more sense for you, like I've done by adding the meat to this dish? If so, I'd love to hear some of your holiday dishes and family traditions that you have. So I'm just going to chop these up. I went ahead and cleaned off my board and got my onions and celery set aside. And while I'm chopping, I'm going to go ahead and chop up the broccoli. Now, again, this is a personal preference as to what size you want your broccoli. I like mine in little tiny bits, so I go ahead and chop them up. And I just use frozen broccoli. And it might be a little bit too frozen right now. I should have taken it out a little bit earlier. So I'm going to let this defrost a little bit. We'll come over. We will go ahead and start on the onions and celery. Okay, so we're back here at the stove. I already have a couple of tablespoons of butter melted in here, and we're just going to add our celery and onions. And you want to make sure that you season each layer. So I'm going to put some salt in here. Not a whole lot, just enough to flavor. And some pepper. And this is white pepper, but it doesn't matter. You can use white or black pepper. And just a little sprinkling. And then we're going to saute these just to kind of, that piece is a little bigger than I want. This is that one. Wow, I didn't do a great job of chopping, but I can always fix that. Hopefully those few little pieces won't make my eyes water like the other one did. Cutting that whole onion, I had to take a break there for a minute. So I'll bring it back when this is about the consistency that I want it to be. Okay, so the consistency of the onions is about where I want them. They have gotten just a little tiny bit of color on there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I'm going to add the broccoli in there. I'm not really trying to cook the broccoli. You know, I just want to get the ice off of it. I did end up opening another bag and adding just a little bit more. And like I said, I'll have the measurements down in the description box. Only because I'm doing about 3/4 of a recipe rather than the full recipe. So this is just the residual heat. The stovetop is off, and I'm just mixing all of this in, and then we will mix all of the ingredients. I still need to shred some cheese. So I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to grab some cheese to shred because I do want some not only on top, but a little bit throughout, not a whole bunch. So be right back. You know, I have to say, filming these videos makes me clean my workstations a little bit more often, and I like it. It clean as you go rather than wait till everything is all done. I've always not been a very good person to clean as I go, and then when your dish is all done, then you have a huge mess to clean in the kitchen. So I am using Colby Jack cheese. It's my preference. It's what we like. You could use any cheese that you like. A cheddar would probably be really good. Maybe a mild cheddar. You wouldn't want something too sharp, but then again, it's your preference, your kitchen, your rules. I'm just hoping you take inspiration from what I do. You don't have to follow me exactly. If you want to, that's great. Maybe the first time, do your own. The first time, follow the recipe, but after that, change it up how you want it. I just cut off a small piece from the big block that I had, and this will be all ready in just a moment here. There we go. It's a little crumbly. I prefer to shred my own cheese as of late. I only buy shredded cheese if I'm in a pinch and I know I'm going to have maybe a big day and I need the convenience, but you can always shred your cheese ahead of time too. That way you've got nice, fresh, beautiful shredded cheese instead of something that has like cornstarch in it or tapioca starch or something to keep it from clumping. So there's our cheese. Let's go back to the other side or get everything blended. So I have 1 cup of, it was 1 cup of uncooked rice that I have in there, and I'm going to add in the celery, onions, and broccoli. Oh, the bottom of that's very hot. Let me blend this. And you'll see this is a massive bowl, but I'm one of those people that I like plenty of room to do my work. I don't want to try to mix this in a bowl or in the dish that I'm going to put it in that it's just going to fit. That's just pet peeve of mine. So I'd rather have plenty of room to blend everything up. I'm going to add the soup in there. There's still a little bit left in there, but I want to see where we're at. And as you remember, we seasoned each layer of this. The rice had some seasoning. The onions and celery had some seasoning. The cream of mushroom soup had some seasoning. Okay. Let's see. Let me grab a spatula. To get the rest of this out of this pan. Just that extra minute made it so I can hold the pan a little bit better. And get the rest of the soup out of the pan. Now, if you find that this is a little bit too thick, you can add a little bit of chicken broth, which is probably what I will do to loosen up the soup a little bit, because it still has to go through the oven. It's going to all cook together in the oven, and you don't want it too runny, but you don't want it too thick. It's almost okay, but I am going to add a splash of that chicken broth that I had already put in the refrigerator. Just a little splash of it, maybe a couple tablespoons. still have to add our cheese too. I'm going to add about, let's start with about a half a cup right now. There we go. And see how that chicken broth just loosened it up just a little bit. If you wanted to be really decadent, maybe you could add a little bit more milk or cream, but I think it has enough. So I'm going to go ahead and get this in the dish that we're going to cook it in. Now you can always, even if you don't need the full recipe, you could always cook the full recipe and put half of it in the freezer. As a matter of fact, I have one in the freezer, but it's the one with the chicken, and I didn't want that today. But like I've said in previous videos, if you're cooking one dish, you can always double it, and if it's something that can go in the freezer, which most things we cook can, it just depends on how you put it in the freezer. But you could put this in the freezer at this stage right here, and it freezes beautifully and reheats in the oven. I would just leave the cheese off the top right now. Here we go. So I have the cheese to put on top. I'm going to go ahead and do that because we are not freezing this today. We are cooking this today. So there's probably, I'm going to put about another half a cup of cheese. Maybe a little bit more. I'm just going to use everything that I have over here without trying to make too much of a mess. And this cooks in the oven at 350 for about 45 minutes. If you could start it with a little bit of foil on top. You can also cook it without the cheese and then put the cheese on in the last 10-15 minutes. But I just put a little bit of foil on there and then take the foil off about half an hour, 20 minutes before it's all done. There we are. So I will show you the casserole when it comes out of the oven. Our family is not due here for another about hour and a half, so I'll probably put it in the oven in about an hour or so. Just going to have the London broil, the green rice, and some dinner rolls. Nothing elaborate, not doing a 10-course meal. I just don't have the energy for that. But it's something healthy, nutritious, and delicious for my family. So I will show it all to you when it's all done, and I'll bring you back then. Welcome back, friends. I went someplace you didn't, so thank you for hanging out here. I just took the green rice out of the oven. I can smell the mushrooms. I can smell the broccoli. It smells delicious. It's still bubbling hot right out of the oven. So obviously we're going to let it cool down. And my family's due here any minute now. And I have the rolls done right here. You can see I just did some quick dinner rolls. And we have the London broil all spiced up to be put on the grill. So we're just waiting for our family to get here so we can enjoy a delicious meal. I will come back when this cools down a little bit and have a taste for you. But I know what it tastes like. It's delicious. But every batch has its own nuances with how much mushroom or chicken or whatever you put into the cream soup and whatnot. So, but it's a little too hot for me to try right now. So I just have a little bit here in a bowl because we are getting ready to have a big meal with the family. So I did want to be able to test it for you. And I didn't want to put a big hole in the dish. It's still hot. Mm. Mm. Hot, but delicious. The celery and onions, you can really taste that, as well as, like I said before, you could smell the mushrooms and the broccoli. It's just a very well balanced dish. The cheese gives it some creaminess. I could eat that whole dish, but I do need to save it for when the family gets here. I'm gonna take one more bite. Mm. Mm. That is so good. I hope you get some inspiration from this and make something like this for yourself, for your family. I hope you enjoy the recipe. I will, like I said, have it down in the description. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you spending the morning here with me as I prepared this dish. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next time. Take care, friends.